good Saturday morning to you, and welcome to Cocopah Speedway's Laptime Live, brought to you by Cocopah Casino, Racing Radio, here on Outlaw Country AM 1400. I'm your host, Mike Stanhope, and thank you so much for joining us today. Headlines, and more headlines, a huge crowd, and an awesome evening of racing last night at the Diamond in the Desert, as Jason Johnson in the number 41 took the first night win in the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series, presented by MAV TV American Reel. Mitch Olson in the number 27 taking the second spot. Tony Stewart in his number 14 running third after an earlier heat win. Johnson, we note, the defending ASCS National Tour champion. All of those drivers and more ready to get back at it again tonight with round number 2 of the Cocopah Cup Challenge, presented by Cocopah Casino. Gates again open at 5 o'clock this afternoon, with green flag racing at 7 p.m. And advance tickets for tonight's show do remain available at the Pacific Avenue Napa Auto Parts store, as well as at the Cocopah Casino gift shop. Pick them up early. You can walk straight into Cocopah Speedway once the gate opens and avoid the line at the box office. 31 cars in the pits last night at Cocopah Speedway, those of the aforementioned podium finishers last night, as well as some of the biggest names in sprint car racing. A busy weekend indeed for Tony Stewart. Late into the track last night after qualifications yesterday for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Subway Fresh Fit 500. Of course, he'll be running in that event tomorrow at Phoenix International Raceway, qualifying for that race yesterday afternoon at 4 p.m. Stewart claiming the number 6 starting position for that race. Then on board a plane to Yuma, arriving at Cocopah Speedway, strapping himself into the number 14 spreader, and then rolling onto the track shortly after 6 p.m. to a big cheer from the thousands on hand. Lots of cheers last night. We'll simply say that. Plenty of exciting race action with both the high groove and the low groove working. And in the end, the biggest cheers are once again going to last night's feature winner, defending ASCS national champion Jason Johnson in the number 41. Looking forward to seeing all of these splendid drivers in action again tonight at Cocopah Speedway. Again, you're listening to Cocopah Speedway's Laptime Live, presented by Cocopah Casino, Racing Radio, here on Outlaw Country AM 1400. And joining us in the studio this morning, the voice of the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series, presented by MAV TV American Reel, Mr. Bryan Hulbert. And Bryan, definitely an exciting night last night.
Oh, it definitely was, and thanks for having me on this morning.
Well, glad you could make it on down to the studios with us this morning. Bryan, you bring it alive for all of the fans out at Cocopah Speedway in attendance for the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series. Your perspective on what we saw last night?
Last night, what we saw, obviously it was a really good race, but what was really unique about that race is how the track came into its own. The fact that you could run the top and you could run the bottom, so it made it where these drivers were not just running around in a single file line. They were able to pass, and a good example of that is Logan Forler. Last night's hard charger came from 21st to finish 7th last night. He was followed in by Wayne Johnson from 19th up to 8th. So those two drivers were able to utilize pretty much top to bottom every groove that was available in the corners of the Cocopah Speedway.
Bryan, you travel throughout the country, of course, with the American Sprint Car Series, and can you kind of give us some perspective on fan support here in the Yuma area, how people here are supporting the American Sprint Car Series, and how that might differ somewhat from what you see in other locales?
It's absolutely tremendous, the support that we have received here in the Yuma area. Last year we came in for the first time, and I was blown away at the crowd that we received last year when we came here, and this year they have not disappointed at all. Just to see how many people were out there last night, and when you have to announce for people to start moving closer together because there are more people coming in, that's a great feeling, not only for us with the American Sprint Car Series that we have that kind of support, but it's a great feeling to be able to know that the track is going to have a successful night. And, Greg Burgess and everybody out there at the Cocopah Speedway, that way they can look at that and say, we want to have you guys back, and we want to make a bigger and better show. And that's one thing, working with Greg Burgess and wanting to build this into a marquee event, not only in March, but when we come back in November when it's $20,000 to win.
Let's talk about the Cocopah Cup Challenge aspect of things for a moment. As you noted, the 2 nights of racing this weekend at Cocopah Speedway, back again for 2 more nights in November. A big payday in store all the way through.
Yeah, and the neat thing about it is if, say, Jason's won night number 1, let's say he sweeps all 4 nights, he gets a $5,000 bonus on top of the, let's see, $13,000 this weekend, $23,000 the next time we come through town. So, do the math. I mean, he will almost match what he would win if he won the national tour.
A little bit of a comeback last night for Jason. Not perhaps the start to the season he had wanted last week at Tucson.
No, definitely. And, he had engine troubles over at Tucson. And when I went down to the front straightaway, I was able to talk to him about that. And pretty much he said it was not the engine's fault. And I quote, "First and foremost on these engine problems we had last week, we gave these Roush Yates engines a wrong rapport. We filled up the nozzles with trash and was just an unfortunate situation because there is definitely nothing wrong with our Roush Yates Ford." So right there, pretty much telling everybody the engine was fine. It was a mistake on their end. And what they mean by they loaded the nozzles up with trash is these sprint cars run a mechanical fuel injection system, and if there's any bit of trash in the lines, whether it's dirt, whether you have a hose coming apart, it builds up in those nozzles and it plugs it off, so it ends up leaning the engine down to the point that it starts burning itself down. It just starts coming apart internally because the air-to-fuel mixture is so intense that it just starts basically destroying the pistons, destroying the valves, and that's what was happening to them last week. They were able to get a fresh engine in the car. Unfortunately, were not able to start in the B main. They ended up having to take a provisional into last weekend's A feature event, but right now, as it stands, 3rd in points coming out of last night.
Well, one more item I'd like to touch on with Johnson. You talked about the Roush Yates power plant in that car, and Johnson in a big way bringing Ford power back into sprint car racing.
Well, with the partnership that he has with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. now, which began last year, it really brought Ford back to the forefront in sprint car racing, which has been dominated for so many years by the Chevrolet Performance engine. And it's really interesting, and you see it in waves where different manufacturers will come into play, different engine builders will come into play. In the early 2000s, Mopar made a huge comeback in sprint car racing with Tony Stewart Racing and Danny Lasowski. And you saw it not only in sprint cars, you saw it in the 4-cylinder midget ranks. I mean, it was incredible, and that kind of went away after a while. And now the Ford has really come back, and the Ford versus the Chevrolet. And in interviews that I've done with Jason Johnson, with Tony Bruce Jr., who both utilize the Roush Yates power here on the national tour, they said it's not so much that the Ford has more power, it's where it has its power, and it's usually at the top end, and traditionally the Ford has done better at the higher end, and it's been able to keep a more consistent torque band and a little more consistent horsepower curve, and on these bigger tracks like we have here at the Cocopah Speedway, that is where they really shine, and we saw that last night with Jason.
We are talking this morning with Bryan Hulbert, voice of the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series National Tour, presented by MAV TV, American Real, Racing Radio, Cocopah Speedway's Laptime Live, presented by Cocopah Casino. Back with more in just a moment here on Outlaw Country AM 1400.
Hi there, game show and red carpet host Todd Duke here with a chance for you to win a trip to Las Vegas and up to $1 million. Play Let's Make a Deal from the Arizona Lottery. If you don't win by scratching, enter your ticket in the lottery's second chance drawing for a trip to Vegas. Trip winners will play the Las Vegas Game Show Experience based on 6 of TV's biggest game shows. Contestants can win cash prizes along the way, plus play for a top prize of $1 million. Let's Make a Deal, the new Scratchers game from the Arizona Lottery. You can't win if you don't play.
Hello, it's Toyota's #1 for everyone sales event. I'm Jan. How can I help?
Shh, keep your voice down.
Who is this?
Call me Black Falcon.
Ah, okay. Black Falcon.
So can anyone get a great deal on a reliable Toyota?
Yes, pretty much.
Even on a Camry?
Camrys, Corollas, Tundras.
So it really is #1 for everyone.
It is.
Even employees of other car companies, including individuals that may or may not be working at the dealership across the street.
Yes.
I'll be right over. I'll be the one with the fake beard and sunglasses. And we're going to need a code word.
How about ridiculous?
Love it.
Toyota's #1 for everyone sales event is on now. Hurry to your Toyota dealer today and get a deal you'll like on the cars you love.
Visit Alexander Toyota in Yuma, or for more information, please log on to Toyota.com. Toyota.
Toyota, let's go places.
Thank you, Yuma, for voting Sign Pro Yuma's best sign and banner shop for 2012. Remember Sign Pro for all your sign needs, like vehicle graphics, magnetics, and custom stickers, and more. Call 783-7776 or stop by Sign Pro today. And thanks again for voting us Yuma's best sign and banner shop.
And you're listening to Racing Radio here on Outlaw Country AM 1400. Welcome back to Laptime Live, presented by Cocopah Casino. Looking ahead on this edition of Laptime Live to tonight's round number 2 of the Cocopah Cup Challenge, presented by Cocopah Casino. The Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series, presented by MAV TV American Reel. And again, joining us in the studio today, the voice of the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series, Bryan Hulbert. Bryan, we've talked about some of the competitors who were in the pits and on track last night at Cocopah Speedway, but many of the brightest stars in sprint car racing that we can talk about today.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we had some great racers last night. Of course, as we recapped earlier, Jason Johnson picking up the win in last night's feature event. He was followed by Mitch Olson, who comes all the way down from Puyallup, Washington, in the Pettit Oil number 27. And, of course, Tony Stewart in the Chevrolet Performance number 14 rounded out the podium. Now, one thing I want to bring up, we had a little bit of an incident coming to the checkered flag. Roger Crockett running in the top 5, him and Brian Brown racing hard for position, and unfortunately Roger ending upside down, and the Medford, Oregon driver did emerge okay. Had some choice words to describe Brian Brown, unfortunately, and really we have to say an incredible piece of driving on the part of Seth Bergman. Unfortunately suffered a lot of damage to his race car. Had Roger lined up dead to rights and climbed the wall to keep from running over him because the top of his cage was exposed and he did not want to run straight into Roger Crockett. So looking down the track and seeing what was going on and able to avoid what could have been a very, very bad situation.
Mentioning both Brown and Crockett, both winners recently on the ASCS National Tour.
Yeah, incidentally, Brian Brown picking up our season opener last Friday night over at Tucson International Raceway, and Roger Crockett picking up the following night, actually getting by Brian Brown with 3 laps remaining in the race.
Can you kind of run us through the points real quickly coming into competition tonight at Cocopah Speedway?
Certainly. Brian Brown right now leading in the Casey General Store number 21, 417 points so far in the season. 28 points back, you will find Roger Crockett with Jason Johnson currently third in points. Now your top 3 drivers, the 3 different winners so far this season. Johnny Herrera last night, unfortunately, problems on his race car in his heat race, forced him into a B main. He ended up having to take a provisional into the feature event. Still finds himself 4th in the tour standings with Wayne Johnson out of Oklahoma City, currently rounding out the top 5, 63 points back from your leader, Brian Brown. Jeff Swindell was running 3rd last night early on before a left rear torsion arm failed on his race car. Unfortunately, in order to get that replaced, they'd pretty much have to disassemble the left side of the rear suspension. He found himself out early, still finds himself 6th in points, 66 points back. Lucas Wolf out of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, the Buffalo Wild Wings number 82, currently 7th in points. Tony Bruce Jr. also with some problems last night on his race car, slips back to 8th in points with Seth Bergman and Brad Loyette, currently your top 10 in Lucas Oil ASCS, presented by MAV TV American Real Point standings. Brad Loyette, your 2012 Brodex Rookie of the Year, this year passes on that honor to 2 drivers trying to go after that title. One is Cole Wood out of Auburn, California, the Oak Grove Ford number 17, and Sean Peterson out of Irving, Texas, in the print place of number 4X. Cole Wood right now 17th, leading in the rookie standings. Sean Peterson 19th in point standings.
Any commentary last night in the pits post-race from either Danny Wood or from Dustin Morgan, event winners last year here at Cocopah Speedway?
I actually didn't get a chance to talk with Dustin so much, but I did get a chance to talk with his crew chief, Jimmy Jones, and really was kicking himself last night. He said he just put the wrong setup on the car. He didn't get, he put too much stagger. He didn't get the right rollout on the rear of the car. So what ended up happening is at the beginning of the race, when the track was still just a little bit on the tacky side, he was really fast, and he was actually had a really good bite coming off the corners, and at one point was up to about 6. But unfortunately, as the race went on and the track dried out, having too much stagger on the car, the back of the car just became looser and looser, and he started losing traction. So he ended up going backwards, ended up finishing 10th. Very respectable for the Oklahoma driver, but still, after winning last season, a disappointment, really. And, Jimmy, he took the brunt of it. He said, it's my fault. I should have read the track better. And, with the way the sprint cars are, you have staggered rear tires, the left side smaller than the right side. And a good way to describe how this works is take a solo cup, lay it on its side, and roll it, and it will naturally want to turn in a circle. And that's the idea with the staggered tires on a sprint car.
The American Sprint Car Series races on a variety of different tracks at a variety of different lengths. Can you kind of talk about the challenges that the drivers and their crews face in terms of setup, going from one type of track to another, say a quarter-mile bull ring as opposed to a 3/8-mile clay oval like Cocopah Speedway?
It's really interesting. You can actually take a lot of the setup aspects that you would use at a quarter-mile and put them on a 3/8-mile track, and where you really vary is not so much maybe with rollout, which on a quarter-mile track you're probably going to have a little bit more stagger, but actually with the way you adjust weight into the car and where you're going to run the wing. With the top wing, the drivers have the ability to move that top wing inside the car. It's on a hydraulic slide, and they preset the amount of pitch in the wing before they go out, but they can actually move that wing back, and of course as they roll it back it will increase the pitch, but what it does is it centers the downforce, whether over the center of the car or more over the rear tires, and that's going to be the biggest key, especially during a race, is being able to move that wing. But as far as setup, like I said, it's how they're going to adjust weight into the car. Sprint cars utilize a torsion bar suspension, which is archaic in some senses when you look at, the upper echelons of racing, where it's coilover and, computer controlled and all the aspects that go into it. In this case, we're using a torsion bar system, and it's very easy to adjust on these cars. At the same time, though, it is a big mind game, and it's very difficult to read the track and be able to come back and put that in the car, because you want the car to be, not perfect at the beginning of the race. You're guessing what the track's going to do at the end of the race, and that's what makes it hard no matter what kind of track you're on.
You noted ability to make those adjustments on wing. When we talk about sprint cars, we're talking about race cars really stripped down to their bare essentials.
They are. One thing about sprint car racing, and like I said, even with the suspension systems, they're not what you would find in Indy. They're not what you would find in IRL. These cars do not have starters. They do not have transmissions. They don't have fans. They run on alcohol, methanol. So that is actually why you do not need to run cooling fans on these cars, because the alcohol runs cold enough that you do not need to do that. It's a mechanical fuel injection system, meaning that everything from the tail tank up to the engine has to be adjusted by hand, and they actually change out throughout the course of the night. They may make a half a dozen changes on the fuel system depending on barometrics, depending on humidity, relative humidity, your elevation, your air density ratios. They're actually looking at all of that in order to fuel these cars so they don't burn them down on the racetrack. So you're right, it is down to the bare essentials. And if you've ever looked inside a sprint car, like I said, there's no transmission. It is what we call a direct drive system. The drive shaft goes right to the back of the motor. It goes right between the driver's legs to the rear end. It's encased in what they call a yoke and torque tube, so in the event that, say, the drive shaft does come loose, it doesn't tear the driver's legs off.
The art and the science of sprint car racing, as being illustrated for us this morning by the voice of the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series National Tour, presented by MAV TV, American Reel, Bryan Hulbert. We'll be back with more in just a moment here on Cocopah Speedway's Laptime Live, brought to you by Cocopah Casino.
Amanda, age 3. Tyler, age 8. Marissa, age 4.5.
We could tell you just how many child abductions last year led to Amber Alerts.
Shaniqua, age 14. Ryan, age 9.
But this isn't about cold statistics. It's about saving kids.
Terrell and Jamal, age 6 months.
Please go to wirelessamberAlerts.org. Sign up to get free Amber Alert text messages on your cell phone. When an Amber Alert is issued in the areas you've chosen, you'll receive a free text message. If you spot the vehicle, the suspect, or the child described in the alert, call 911. Sign up today for free at wirelessamberAlerts.org. You can imagine what the family of an abducted child is feeling.
Alexander, age 7.
If you actually did help save that child, just imagine what that would feel like. WirelessAmberAlerts.org. A child is calling for help. This message brought to you by the Wireless Foundation, the U.S. Department of Justice, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and the Ad Council.
Tony Stewart, the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series National Tour. Tonight at the Diamond of the Desert, Cocopah Speedway. Don't miss wing sprint car excitement like you've never seen before under the beautiful Sonoran skies at Cocopah Speedway. Tickets on sale now at the Cocopah Casino gift shop and local area Napa parts stores. Tony Stewart, Cocopah Speedway. Visit CocopahSpeedway.com for more information.
When you want to stay informed, all you need to do is tune in to Outlaw Country. When breaking news happens in Yuma, the Outlaw Country News Department is on top of it. News Director Jennifer Blackwell is quick to provide news information and updates to keep the community informed. Over the airwaves and on Facebook and Twitter. When you want Yuma news you know you can count on, keep it right here. Outlaw Country is your home for the best classic country and Yuma news with Jennifer Blackwell.
And we are back on Cocopah Speedway's Laptime Live Racing Radio here on Outlaw Country AM 1400, presented by Cocopah Casino. And again, joining us in studio this morning, the voice of the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series National Tour, presented by MAV TV, American Real, Bryan Hulbert. And Bryan, during the break, talking about some of the changes that we've seen in race car technology over the past 10 years as it relates to sprint cars. And can you bring us up to speed a little bit on what we have seen and what we may see going forward?
Well, one of the biggest things, and I talked about this a little bit earlier and didn't get much more into detail on it, the fact that, we do run the torsion bar assembly, but probably the biggest technological change that we've seen in sprint car racing over the last 10 years is the shock packages on these cars. And you'll see a lot of the teams, they actually build their own shocks in trailer. They have what they call a shock dyno. It's hooked into a computer system, and they can actually go in, put this shock on the dyno, and it'll run the shock, and it'll tell you rebound, it'll tell you everything you need, and they will strip the shock apart, revalve it, put it back together, and build a shock custom to what they want to do with the car. So that is probably the most advanced thing that we have done on these cars in the last 50 years. And that has completely changed the setup aspect of these race cars and how they get around the racetrack.
Most of the teams do that on their own, or are there teams out there who say, well, share a secret here or there?
There are no secrets. The thing about racing is you can tell them the truth and they'll still think you're lying to them. And that's just racing. I mean, and that's just the mindset. Everybody's out there to compete. So, you're not going to go up and say, hey, well, what kind of shocks are you running? They'll probably show you, but here's the thing. Every driver has their own driving style. The setup that I put on Jason Johnson's car, if I went over and put it on, say, Wayne Johnson's car, I can't say that Wayne would be able to drive the car because his driving style is completely different from Jason's. So, a lot of times you have to figure out the setup and you have to figure out the car based on what makes your driver comfortable in the car.
Everybody unique, everybody individual, and race car prep certainly predicated upon that.
Yes.
Bryan, would like to talk about you for just a moment. Your involvement.
You're going to scare your listeners off now.
Well, we're going to do our best not to do that. But how did you come to be involved in the American Sprint Car Series, and just a little bit about bringing us up to speed on your background?
Really, I kind of got this job by sheer luck of being in the right place at the right time. The series came through my hometown of Las Cruces, New Mexico at the Southern New Mexico Speedway in 2010, and I was calling the sport class, which was our USRA USMTS Modifieds, and they had a gentleman come in out of the St. Paul area of Minnesota named Justin Zock, who is a very well-known national announcer, and they had him come in to call the sprint cars, and got done calling the modifieds, had a great time. The show was great for both classes, And the next night I came in, and Scott Traylor, who hosts Racing Boys and RacingBoys.com, who does audio broadcasts online for the American Sprint Car Series, came up to me and asked if I'd ever thought about doing it for a living, and I told him that'd be the greatest thing ever. That's something I'd always, being an announcer, as redneck as this may sound, has been a dream of mine since I was a little kid, and it came from listening to our local announcer, who's named Alan Moore. He was stricken with polio as a child, and still managed to find a way to be himself. He didn't let it get him down. He didn't have that woe is me attitude. And it was just such an inspiration to see what he did. And to kind of give you an idea, racetracks, most of them don't have elevators. This man was on crutches almost his entire life. He would hand over hand climb into the tower at that racetrack so he could call the races. If that's not inspiration, and if that's not determination, I don't know what is. And it just really, I looked at him and said, that I want to do this. I want to call races. To me, that was the neatest thing. That was the voice of God as far as I was concerned. And, I am really honored and very blessed and glad that I get to do this, because it's not everybody gets to say, I'm doing what I've always dreamed of doing. I don't have a job. I have a career. I have a lot of fun. I get to work with some of the greatest people in the country. I get to work with announcers all over the United States that I learned so much from, because everybody has their own style and everybody has their own thing, and it's really neat to be able to go all over the country and listen to some of these announcers and go, wow, that's really neat. And again, and to get their story, because it's really interesting to see how everybody got involved. And I grew up in racing. My family owned cars. I owned cars with my family, whether it was street stocks up into sprint cars. And, when you have a passion for something, who knows how far you can go in it.
Well, Bryan, you certainly bring it all alive for us out at Cocopah Speedway for the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series National Tour, and we cannot thank you enough for stopping in to visit with us today. One final quick question for you. Any sort of predictions for tonight?
You'll never hear me make a prediction on the winner.
Excelente. To find out about that winner, ladies and gentlemen, you got to come on out to the racetrack. The stars of the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series, presented by MAV TV American Reel, back in action tonight at the Diamond in the Desert Cocopah Speedway. And yes,
and if you did not make it out last night and you want to find out what happened, make sure you go to ASCSracing.com, the online home for the American Sprint Car Series. Follow us on Facebook, and make sure to follow us on Twitter.
And that Twitter @address?
The Twitter @LucasOilASCS.
You can find all of those resources and more, and we once again thank Bryan Hulbert, the voice of the Lucas Oil American Sprint Car Series, presented by MAV TV American Reel. Again, advance tickets remain on sale at the Pacific Avenue Napa Auto Parts store for tonight's second round of the Cocopah Cup Challenge. You can also pick them up at the Cocopah Casino gift shop, or you can get them at the gate. And again, plenty of tickets still available. Anticipating another big crowd tonight, but not to worry, plenty of room for you in the brand new concrete grandstands at Cocopah Speedway. Shuttle buses between Cocopah Casino and Cocopah Speedway will be running tonight, as they are for each and every race in 2013 at Cocopah Speedway. Easy access by simply parking over at the casino, maybe enjoying a late lunch, early dinner, and the many exciting entertainment options offered at Cocopah Casino before hopping on board the shuttle and coming on over to the Speedway. The shuttle's also a great way to beat the exit rush. We'd remind you as well to follow Cocopah Speedway on Facebook. You can like us on Facebook at Cocopah Speedway. You'll find lots of other specialized content and information regarding Cocopah Speedway, Cocopah Casino, and the 2013 racing season at www.cocopahspeedway.com. Our thanks once again to Bryan Hulbert for taking time out of a busy race day to talk with us. You've been listening to Laptime Live, presented by Cocopah Casino. Back with more next Saturday morning, 11 a.m., here on Outlaw Country AM 1400.